So WrestleMania 42 Saturday is in the books, and we have a lot to talk about. The show opened with an entrance from the host, the GOAT, John Cena, with his music hitting, and it was really strange to see him walk into the stadium in a full suit. He teased that he wasn't going to be doing the run down the ramp, but he did kind of do a little run down the ramp. Although he didn't slide into the ring, he then just got in and did a short and sweet introduction to the show. Before he could start talking, you could see him welling up and there were tears in his eyes, man. It was really nice to see. This is the first time he's obviously been in front of a full live crowd since his retirement at Saturday night's main event in December, and it was nice to see him taking the adulation from the crowd. What was interesting about this is he directly acknowledged the polarising reaction to the build-up to this year's WrestleMania. The opening match saw the Usos and LA Knight take on the Vision and IShowSpeed, where Speed pushed LA Knight inadvertently into his teammate Logan Paul, who was on the ring apron, sending him flying to the outside of the ring. Austin Theory took exception to this, but during his frustration, LA Knight was able to hit him with a BFT and pick up the win. Post-match, Logan Paul and Austin Theory were obviously very frustrated and angry at IShowSpeed and started beating him down, and they were planning to put him through the announce table, but to everybody's surprise, the Usos and LA Knight actually saved him. This resulted in IShowSpeed leaping off the top turnbuckle and plunging Logan Paul through the announce table on the outside. This was a really great spot, one I was actually quite nervous for, considering I've never seen Speed do something like this in WWE before, but I have to say he pulled it off brilliantly. This was a relatively quick match, but it didn't overstay its welcome. It did what it was meant to do, and it was a nice opener to the show. I'm going to be tracking my predictions as well throughout this video, and I did predict that the babyfaces were going to win, so that is 1 out of 1 for me so far. The second match of the evening saw Jacob Fatu take on Drew McIntyre in an unsanctioned match, and Jacob wasted no time in attacking Drew as he hit him with a suicide dive whilst he was still making his entrance. A toolbox was brought out early, which showed Drew having some signs of PTSD, as of course he had his head split open by a toolbox in a prior match that he had with CM Punk in the Hell in a Cell match. This match saw Fatu have a wrench shoved into his face and McIntyre get viciously whipped with the belt, which was actually the referee's belt. The final sequence came with Drew getting blasted in the skull with the toolbox before being put through a table via a mighty moonsault, which enabled Jacob Fatu to get the victory. This was a decent match. It certainly wasn't bad, but for me personally, it wasn't violent enough considering the build-up and the personal nature of this feud leading into WrestleMania. Kind of like a lot of the matches on this card, which I'll come into as we go further into this video, it just left me wanting more, but not necessarily in a good way. It just felt like we were shortchanged. The performances were good, the spots were good, it was enjoyable, it just felt like it was a little bit too short, and I can't believe there was no blood in this match considering. I mean, if you could have chosen any match on the card that should have had blood, it really should have been this one. The cynical part of me feels like we were being shortchanged because this and the opening match of the night were free on ESPN2 over in the US, so it almost felt like these first two bouts were a bit like WrestleMania Light, and they saved the good stuff for behind the paywall. And I did predict that Jacob Fatu was going to win here, so that's 2 out of 2 predictions for me. Next we had the Women's Fatal 4-Way Tag Team match for the WWE Women's Tag Team Championship, which brought the first real high of the night. Lyra, Valkyria and Bayley, Alexa Bliss and Charlotte Flair and the Irresistible Forces made their way to the ring separately, and then we saw the Bella Twins make their way to the top of the entrance ramp with Nikki Bella on a crutch. Nikki explained that she worked really hard, but she is not medically cleared to compete, so she called in an old friend, and none other than Paige's music hit to a massive return at WrestleMania for her to tag up with Brie Bella in this match. This was a really great moment, especially for British fans such as myself. It's really nice to see Paige back in the WWE where she belongs. But as expected, as this match went on, we were being teased and teased more and more, waiting for Paige to be tagged in. Overall, this was a good match, certainly not anything to ride home about, but it was decent and it was clearly all about Paige's big return. And this match ended with Alexa Bliss going for Twisted Bliss off the top rope, but Paige managed to get her knees up and follow it up with Rampage to pin her and win the WWE Women's Tag Team Championship with Brie Bella. This was undoubtedly a great WrestleMania moment, really heartwarming to see Paige back, although I do feel that Bayley and Lyra Valkyria were the worthy winners here. I can understand that it may have been a little bit odd if Paige didn't win the championship after her big return, but I have to say I do feel bad for Bayley and Lyra here. I think from a storyline point of view it would have made a lot more sense for them to win. I think personally as well for Bayley, because of course she missed out on WrestleMania last year, having the rug pulled from under her literally like days beforehand. And you can have a big return and not win. I mean, the obvious example I think to is Edge's return to WWE back in the 2020 Royal Rumble match. He came back, it was an incredible moment, everybody loved it, but he didn't win the Rumble match and it didn't matter. And in hindsight, I don't wish that he did win the Rumble match because Drew won it. It was an amazing moment. He went on to face Brock Lesnar. but none of that overshadowed Edge's massive return. This was my first wrong prediction of the evening, but I can't really be too angry because there's no world in which I would have guessed that Paige was going to return to WWE. Next up, we saw Becky Lynch challenging AJ Lee for the Women's Intercontinental Championship, and Becky had a really cool entrance with the Wonder Years playing her to the ring live, although I'm almost certain, no, actually, in fact, I'm completely certain that the Wonder Years were lip-syncing. Jessica Fast Count Carr, as Wade Barrett referred to her as, was the referee here, which is a nice callback because Becky has had clear issues with her officiating in the past. And the story of this match was Becky trying to avoid the Black Widow at all costs because, of course, she has tapped out to that submission move to AJ Lee 3 times. At one point, Becky pushed Jessica Carr, who stood up for herself to be fair, and shoved Becky back, showing that she was the one in charge, and this allowed AJ Lee to hit Becky with a manhandle slam for a very near fall. Lynch cleverly took off the turnbuckle cover and stood in the corner to hide it from the referee's view. She then pulled the referee between her and AJ, which created a brief opening for her to slam AJ's face onto the exposed turnbuckle. This, followed up by a manhandle slam, saw Becky Lynch win back the Women's Intercontinental title. This was a really good finish, very clever from Becky, and I do ultimately think this was the right booking decision. I know I did predict AJ to win, but this was clearly going to be the match that I get wrong in all of my predictions, if any. I really didn't know which way to go, and I ultimately went with AJ just because I thought this feud would carry on otherwise. However, I think Becky's now won the title back and AJ is going to disappear for a while. This match was very entertaining. I've got no complaints with it whatsoever, apart from, again, it felt a little bit short. I enjoyed the story that these two ladies told, particularly with the involvement of Jessica Carr, which made it quite interesting, and I really enjoyed the way in which Becky won, because yes, it was heelish, but it was quite sly and clever at the same time, instead of her looking like a complete dumbass, which, let's be honest, she kind of has so far in this feud. In hindsight, I really should have predicted Becky to win this, but I didn't, so that's another incorrect prediction for me, which leaves me at 2 out of 4 so far. The next match saw the ring general Gunther take on Seth freaking Rollins, and these two wasted absolutely no time at getting started, as Gunther jumped Seth before the opening bell, and the two brawled both in and outside of the ring for a couple of minutes before the match could officially start. This match was absolutely fantastic. For me, beyond a shadow of a doubt, it was the best in-ring performance of the night, and the guys got the crowd so invested, which is particularly admirable considering this feud was built up at the last minute. As you'd expect from any Gunther match, this was extremely physical with so many tough spots. Some of the sounds of the chops on both Seth and Gunther were brutal. We saw Seth get powerbombed onto the ring apron. There was a buckle bomb from Seth onto Gunther into the corner of the ring as well, which looked particularly gnarly. This was a really good match where you could just see two people just completely going at each other. Towards the end of the match, we saw Seth Rollins pedigree Gunther onto the announce table and then follow that up shortly afterwards with a stomp onto it too. And whilst the referee was checking on Gunther on the outside of the ring, a returning Bron Breakker brutally speared Seth Rollins into the barricade on the outside of the ring. He then shoved Seth back into the ring, which allowed Gunther to take advantage after recovering and lock in the sleep hold to make Seth pass out in the middle of the ring. Definitely the correct booking decision. I think, like I've said previously, there's no way Gunther should be losing this match, and this was done in a fantastic way as well, because it didn't make Gunther look weak. The two were having a fantastic match, and it was a great platform to bring back Bron Breakker, which is clearly where Seth's story is going now. Then after the match, we saw Bron Breakker turn back around at the top of the entrance ramp and absolutely sprint down that thing at breakneck speed to spear Seth once again. Although you can kind of tell it looked a little bit botched. It looked more like Seth was trying to get out of the way of it a little bit, which I cannot blame him whatsoever, because if he got hit by that spear full pelt, I'm pretty sure he would have broken some ribs. And for me, strangely, this actually made the Drew McIntyre-Jacob Fatu match from earlier in the night come off as worse, because these two were able to sell me more on their hatred for each other and their pure violence than Drew and Jacob were able to after months of building that up. And this isn't me having a dig at Jacob or Drew. As I said, I enjoyed their performances. I just thought the match was a little bit short and not as violent enough as it should have been considering their rivalry. If anything, this is me heaping praise on Seth and Gunther, because ironically, this was the best match of the night by quite a stretch, and it's the one that was the most thrown together at the last minute. This was a correct prediction for me, so that takes me to 3 out of 5 for the evening. The penultimate match of the show saw Liv Morgan take on Stephanie Vaquer for the Women's World Championship, and we saw Liv change her entrance music to her new song, Trouble, with her entrance being complete with choreography, which looked very similar to that of the music video. I haven't really got much to say about the entrance. I've seen people absolutely hating on it, saying it was terrible, and some people thinking it was okay. At the end of the day, I'm not really going to complain about a Liv Morgan entrance like that. She's very attractive. That's all I've really got to say. In contrast, Stephanie was much more businesslike, marching to the ring with purpose in her eyes, feeling like she had a job to do. And the early stages of the matches reflected this, with Stephanie looking locked in and focused, whilst Liv was being too cocky and overly confident. There was an inevitable interference from Roxanne Perez and Raquel Rodriguez of the Judgment Day, which allowed Liv Morgan to take advantage and hit Oblivion on Stephanie. However, she was able to kick out. Their presence continued to pay dividends for Liv, though, who was able to take advantage once again, hit a second Oblivion, and pin Stephanie Vaquer to become the new Women's World Champion. For me, this was the most scathing example of the night of just poor execution. I'm not annoyed at the performances from the women. I thought they both did really well. I'm not annoyed at the result. I think that was the correct booking decision, but this match was way too short. Considering the bumpy ride we've had getting to WrestleMania 42, the Stephanie Vaquer and Liv Morgan feud is one of the best built feuds that we had going into the show, and one that I was particularly looking forward to. And again, I just felt completely shortchanged here. It was paint by numbers. The Judgment Day got involved the first time, Steph kicks out, Judgment Day get involved a second time, Liv's able to win. It's just boring and predictable, and I don't really feel like it does anything for either woman. This did not feel like a WrestleMania match at all, much like quite a few of the matches on this card, unfortunately. This felt like another run-of-the-mill World Championship match that we just see on a random episode of Monday Night Raw. I mean, compare this. Let's go back to March 2025, where we saw Rhea Ripley take on Io Sky for the Women's World Championship on Raw, where the two had an absolute banger of a match on free television, and Io won and became the new champion literally weeks before WrestleMania. Now look at that as a prime example of a Women's World Championship match that was just on Raw, and compare it to what we've just got at WrestleMania 42, especially considering the strong build-up and personal nature of the feud between Liv and Steph. For me, this simply wasn't good enough, unfortunately. Although I did get the prediction right, so that takes me to 4 out of 6 for the evening. Before we got to the main event, we saw John Cena enter the ring to announce the official attendance of WrestleMania 42 Saturday, 50,816, before Bianca Belair's music hit, which made me sit up out of my seat, as it's been a long time since we've seen Bianca on WWE TV. She had a huge feathery coat on, and me, like I'm sure many others were, wondering whether she was actually going to be competing randomly, as she hinted that she had a surprise, but as she unzipped her coat, she revealed that she is pregnant. So congratulations to her and Montez Ford. Really nice moment for them as a family. Obviously, from a slightly selfish point of view, this means we're not going to see her compete in WWE for quite a long time to come, even more. But let's be honest, family comes first. So congratulations to Bianca and Montez. This was a really nice moment, and then Cena joked that actually we had to include the youngest ever WWE fan and announce the attendance now at 50,817. Now we get to the main event of the night, where the undisputed WWE Champion Cody Rhodes was defending against Randy Orton, and I really wasn't sure what to expect here considering the build-up and the insertion of Pat McAfee. Pat made his way down the entrance ramp, giving the middle finger to all the fans along the way, and it was quite funny to watch Netflix fighting for their lives to show Pat McAfee holding his hands up but carefully not show the middle fingers. Although you did see it sometimes, and you could see plenty of fans giving Pat the middle finger back as well. He then proceeded to hit Cody Rhodes in the back of the head with a microphone before the match could even start. However, he soon got his comeuppance as he was hit by a Cody cutter and ultimately slashed through the announce table by Jelly Roll, which took him out of this completely, and he was stretchered out of the stadium. So this in itself was a little bit bizarre, as the match hadn't even started yet, and was quite reflective of the feud in a way, as we saw Jelly Roll and Pat McAfee get involved for whatever reason, but this was seemingly done to get Pat out of the picture, although I've watched way too much pro wrestling over the years to believe that he was actually going to be gone for the rest of the night. During this match, Randy showed visible discomfort with his back, following on from speculation that he wasn't 100% going into this match, and Cody made sure to focus on his back during this. The first portion of the match really saw Cody dominating and focusing on Randy's back, although Randy started to wrestle with pure instinct, hitting Cody with a superplex from the top rope, damaging himself in the process, but finally being able to get in some offense. However, Cody bounced back and shoved Randy's face into the ring post on the outside, which busted him open, and then this portion of the match really became a more methodical beatdown of the Viper, much like the old school Randy Orton offense that we would see him deliver to his opponents. A quick burst of energy saw Randy hit Cody with a crossroads, but Cody was able to get his shoulder up. Then he was shortly able to hit Randy with an RKO afterwards, but Randy was able to kick out of that too. Now, the ending sequence of this match was absolutely crazy. So much happened in a short span of time. So Cody Rhodes flicked Randy Orton in the eyes, which caused him to obviously lose some of his sight, and this resulted in Randy RKOing the referee Charles Robinson by accident, thinking that it was Cody. Randy then tried to take advantage of the fact that there was no referee and kick Cody between the legs. Cody, however, managed to grab his leg and then instead low-blowed Randy himself, showing that this time he is willing to do whatever it takes to win. Despite this, Randy almost immediately bounced back, hitting Cody with an RKO, and then we saw Pat McAfee run down the entrance ramp in a referee's shirt and a neck brace to slide into the ring and make the 3 count, although Cody did kick out at 2. While stalking Cody for a further attack, Randy then RKO'd Pat McAfee out of absolutely nowhere, which enabled Cody Rhodes to take advantage and hit Randy with a crossroads, and then the original referee, Charles Robinson, just so happened to recover in time to count the 3, which meant that Cody Rhodes has retained his undisputed WWE Championship. Post-match, Randy then took the title off Cody, hit him in the skull with the title belt, and then followed it up with one of his old-school, brutal punts to the face. And I'm not sure if any of you have seen the clip of Cody after the fact, but Randy definitely laid this punt into Cody legitly. His eye was closed, he was obviously bloody from the match as well, and I believe they actually cancelled Cody's photo ops at WWE World on Sunday because of this. Now, so much happened here, and I was entertained by it, and I agreed with almost all of it. I understood all of it up until the very last bit where Randy RKO'd Pat McAfee. I was just left scratching my head thinking, why? I can understand he was probably frustrated that Pat didn't count the 3 count, but Cody did legitimately kick out. Maybe he expected Pat to count to 3 regardless. Fair enough, I get that, and we all know Randy's a bit unhinged, but this is the only bit that just felt a little bit out of place. Overall, I guess I'm glad with the decision, because this means that Pat McAfee should be gone if we are to trust his own words, as he said on SmackDown that if Randy lost at WrestleMania that Cody would never see or hear from him in the WWE again. So as far as we're concerned at the moment, Pat McAfee is gone, he is out of here, and I don't know anybody who's going to be complaining about that. Maybe this is WWE's way of acknowledging that he should never have been inserted into this feud in the first place, and this is just their way of fixing it. Perhaps this is Triple H fixing the interference from TKO, although this is pure speculation, as a lot of people have thought that TKO and the corporate suits have got involved here and inserted Pat McAfee into this feud just to sell tickets for WrestleMania, which, you know what, wouldn't surprise me if this was the plan all along either, because they've kicked him out of the story at WrestleMania, and if the whole point of adding him in here was to get tickets sold for WrestleMania, then it served his purpose and he's not needed anymore. The main event was honestly just a little bit weird. The opening sequence with Jelly Roll and Pat McAfee just made things start off a little bit bizarrely. The match itself started off slow and then built and definitely got more and more entertaining. I did enjoy the match between Randy and Cody, and the final sequences were chaotic. But as I said, just that last little bit with the RKO to Pat McAfee was a little bit confusing, and I'm a little bit surprised to see Cody retain the championship. I did predict Randy was going to win this match, so that's another wrong prediction for me, which means my full WrestleMania Saturday prediction score was 4 out of 7. Now, what are my final thoughts on WrestleMania 42 Night 1? I have to say this show was very, very underwhelming, and that was honestly reflected in the crowd reactions. The abundance of adverts in this show was absolutely criminal. It really feels like TKO have sucked the life out of WWE. The commercialization has gone absolutely crazy. We have adverts on the ring mat, we have them on the turnbuckle covers, we have them on the LED barricades, we have fans spending God knows how much money to have their names printed on the bottom of the ring mat. WWE superstars are also on Cameo now. It just feels like any which way that TKO can find to exploit WWE to make money, they are doing. I understand you're always going to have some kind of advertisements on the show, but the level to which this happened was absolutely outrageous. We saw trailers for the Mortal Kombat film, the Street Fighter film, the Mandalorian and Grogu, and we saw what felt like 100 different or repeated clips of this upcoming Hulk Hogan documentary on Netflix. Sure, promote it once, of course you're going to promote that on a WWE show, maybe even promote it twice throughout the night, but my God, we were beaten over the head with these clips, and it really doesn't help Hulk Hogan. He came across, as usual, as such an egotist. And I thought this was particularly brain dead, as a large portion of the fans, myself included, simply do not care for Hulk Hogan. Yes, he had a massive impact on the industry, nobody can deny that. If you're going to have a Mount Rushmore of WWE wrestlers, he has to be on there. I'm not arguing otherwise. But the fact is, he was just a bad human being. There was also a distinct lack of promo packages before each match, apart from the main event. I'm pretty sure Cody and Randy is the only one that actually got a dedicated promo package, which I find so freaking bizarre. This is the show, your Super Bowl, right? This is meant to be the show that has the most eyes on it throughout the entire year. So there's going to be a lot of casual people out there that haven't been following the storylines and don't really know what's going on. Why would you not show video packages? People need to understand why these people are fighting. What is the story here? Why do people care? Why should you be invested? They didn't bother with that. Instead, we just got adverts for DoorDash and God knows what other services that they have in America. Aside from the Seth Rollins and Gunther match, none of these matches were paced very well, and they felt quite rushed. I mean, 4 of the 7 matches on the card were sub 10 minutes, which again is just absolutely criminal for WrestleMania. And I do find it highly ironic that the best match of the night from a pacing point of view, from an entertainment point of view, and from a wrestling point of view was Seth and Gunther, which is the one that was thrown together at the last minute because they didn't have anything else for either of them. I think generally my views are quite positive, and I generally have quite a positive outlook on WWE and pro wrestling. I really try and stay positive, but this night just didn't feel like WrestleMania at all. It was really underwhelming. Sure, it had its moments, and I think a lot of the booking decisions were correct, but the execution was just poor. And from someone sitting at home and watching the show, it just felt like I had adverts being shoved in my face 24/7, and the wrestling was honestly just a side piece. But I do want to end this on a positive, so my 3 main positives for the night are Paige's return to WWE. This was a really nice moment. Seth Rollins and Gunther overall, it was easily the best thing of the night. And Pat McAfee being kicked out of the storyline, hopefully. I don't want to rest on my laurels, but it definitely seems like now he's been annexed from this, and we can carry on with the Cody Rhodes and Randy Orton feud because it clearly isn't over, and we can just get to the history between these two men because there is no way this ever needed the involvement of Pat McAfee. So that'll do it for WrestleMania Saturday. I think it goes without saying that Sunday has a lot of heavy lifting to do. I'm tentatively excited, but also kind of concerned, because if that is how Night 1 was produced, it's very likely that Night 2 is going to be produced in a similar fashion. We can only hope that WWE has seen the response online and changes how tonight is produced, but let's wait and see. Thank you guys for watching. I will be back at you tomorrow with another WWE PLE recap video for WrestleMania 42 Sunday. If you did enjoy this video, I would appreciate it if you could subscribe to the channel or support me in any other which way that you can. But until next time, I'll see you later.